2 years ago, my Anthurium Luxurians looked like this. And in today's video, we're following the plant's entire journey from being a teeny tiny tissue culture baby all the way to this. And of course, I'm going to address anything that I've learned about this plant. Oh, hello. Should we get started? Okay, let's go. Hey everybody, and welcome back to our YouTube channel. I can't believe it's already been 2 years. Honestly, time is flying when you're having fun. And to be honest, in general, I still can't believe that I actually have this plant in my collection. And if I could summarize this entire episode in one word, I would probably say patience. Because first and foremost, I stayed very patient in getting this plant in the first place. It was on my wish list for the longest time because I think it is one of the most stunning anthuriums, and it's a very different anthurium to my normal veiny, velvet, dark anthurium that I like to grow. But this plant was incredibly expensive in Australia up until a couple of years ago. So I stayed really patient and waited for this plant to come out of tissue culture. And then once I bought it as a little tissue culture baby, I had to continuously stay patient to watch this tiny plant grow into something substantial. And over those 2 years, it didn't just grow into something substantial. I already started its first pollination journey as well. So there's going to be lots happening in today's video. So we better get started and take it back all the way to 2 years ago when I received this plant in the mail. Couple of things real quick. First of all, it wasn't the only plant that I unboxed that day. There was also a couple of alocasias in that box, so every now and then in the videos you might see them kind of float around as well. It was originally a video where I unboxed all of them in one go. And the other thing is that Jan from the past, present and future would really appreciate if you could give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and leave a nice comment down below. This video has taken me 2 years to produce, and I really enjoy producing these long videos because I think it ultimately gives the viewer a better viewer experience. You get to see the whole plant's journey without any cliffhangers. However, I can only produce so many of them because, well, they do take quite a lot of time and forward thinking. So I would really appreciate if you could make this video count, engage with it in any shape or form so it can reach as many people as possible. And I really appreciate that in advance. But let's take it back to Jan from 2 years ago. So this is from a plant grower in Western Australia called Flora Magnifica, and I've ordered from them a lot recently. Well, by a lot I mean I've ordered 3 plants before. I've had my El Choco, my Florida Beauty and my Florida Ghost, all from them. It's also going into spring over here, so it's just a perfect time to get onto some plants. And when they're still really small, I can still fit them in my IKEA cabinet, which is awesome. So I have 2 of the same. There was one anthurium always on my wish list that I was never able to get my hands on because the prices were just outrageous, like thousands. I'm not talking about like $300-400. Like I'm talking about plants selling for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending on how unique the hybrid was or how pure the seeds are or whatever it might be. Anthurium Luxurians. So I found these cute little tissue cultured ones and they're still $100 each, right? So it's still not a steal. It's still quite expensive if you think about the size. I deserve to reward myself. And I don't even need a reason to reward myself. If I feel like it, I should just do it. And I just really felt like it. So I got 2. You're gonna focus. Here you go. I think that's in focus now. Well, they're tiny. You can't really see much yet. Let's just check their roots as well. And they seem still very moist. Yep, there's some roots visible there. Alright, second one. Yeah, I don't want to pull it out too much, but there's some roots there. I can see roots. So what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to pop them in my IKEA cabinet that's just right behind me over here, because right now the most important thing is for these plants to recover from any sort of shock. So they were shipped from Western Australia. I got the tracking notification on Monday, so I'm assuming somebody would have packed these plants on Sunday and then brought them to the post office on Monday. It's Wednesday afternoon now, so the plant has you know, been in darkness and been shipped around, and I don't know what sort of temperatures it would have been exposed to over the last 3 to 4 days. And these plants are small, right? Like they're not going to be able to deal with all too much. So right now my mission is really to reduce the shock that shipping would have induced. So I want to provide them with the best possible conditions. Alrighty, so let's hear from Jan in the future, who hopefully is going to show you some nice progress. Alrighty, and here we are 1 month later, and I forgot to turn off slow motion. So this whole thing is going to be in slow motion without sound, so voice over Jan is taking over. But let me speed up that footage for us a little bit so we don't have to watch me do this all so slowly. Luxurians, they actually shot the lights out when it comes to the root department. Look how nice those roots look. Not much leaf growth so far, but just purely based on these chunky roots over here, I figured let's give them a repot. So I very carefully try and remove as much moss as possible from these roots and give them an aeroid mix instead. Now this aeroid mix over here isn't as chunky as my aeroid mix I would use for a moss pile, because these plants are still quite small, and while they have good roots, these roots are still quite fine, just purely given the size of the plant. So it's an aeroid mix that's a little more tree fern fiber heavy. Tree fern fiber has great water retention, so that should suit those plants, and those are 10 centimeter pots. I put a little layer of moss on top of the Anthuriums, and then I pop them back into my IKEA cabinet, and I'll see you in the next update. And here we are. So it's been 1.5 months since the repot, and these plants have been thriving. So let's have a look at all of these. I'll bring them a little bit closer, but overall very, very happy with their growth so far. And then I have the 2 Luxurians. They look so nice. Look at how like the texture of Luxurians is already coming out, even though they're still quite small. This one is already growing its next leaf over here, so very, very excited for that. Overall, really, really happy with these. Love them. Can't see quite as much root growth. There's some coming through, but compared to the alocasias, there's quite little root growth in here. Actually, I can't really see much, but that's okay. So far, I'm super, super happy with that. I did not expect them to actually grow this fast. So I'm excited to give you an update in another couple of months or weeks time. Hello, and I'm back with a little update. It's been 2 months since we last spoken, and a few things have happened. Some good, some bad. Let's start off with some of the bad news. I only have one of the Luxurians left, but that is not because the other one died. That is because I gave it away. And I actually gave the larger one away, and I kept the smaller one. But it is growing a new leaf right here. And I'm really excited to see what this turns into. The texture is exactly what I was hoping for. Nice, and I think it's called bull-eyed. Technically not actually bad news. I was expecting that. I've had these plants for 6 months, and I've had them for the better half of the year, if that makes sense. So the 6 months going into spring and summer. So just keep that in mind. Here I've got my Luxurians over here. I think it's come a long way as well. This is a new leaf that's still inflating, so I hope it's going to get quite large. It has some roots pushing up against the edge over here. So it's doing its thing, but I'm not in a rush to repot this or do anything about it. It's just doing its own thing, and I'm happy for it to do so. I was really worried at the very beginning when they're really tiny, they're so vulnerable, but it overcame that stage. So I think from here I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll stay patient. Thank you so much, Jan from the past, and here we are at the 12-month mark. I haven't filmed any updates over the last 6 months because it wasn't the most rewarding 6 months ever, to be really fair. Keep in mind that I live in Australia, so I got these plants at the beginning of spring last year, so obviously I then got to enjoy the best time of the year for the first 6 months, but now the last 6 months were kind of the worst time of the year to grow. Specifically, the last 3 months weren't really the best, and neither of these plants has really done much in those last 3 months. So there wasn't all too many updates to share, but there are definitely some updates. Now, I'm very happy with the performance of this plant. It's not ginormous, but if you consider how tiny it was just 1 year ago, I think this plant has done really, really well. Absolutely love the texture of this plant. Also really like the red veining at the back and the, I think it's hexagonal, and these squarish petioles, these ruffled petioles. Very cool. Really, really enjoy that. You can also see some nice roots coming out here, just waiting for them to make contact with the moss, and lots of roots within the pot over here. Probably a candidate for a repot, but as part of the repot it will then struggle to fit into the IKEA cabinet, or well, it won't struggle, but there's too much other stuff in the IKEA cabinet still. So I'm gonna wait another month or so once some plants move out of the cabinet into my room. It's gonna be good conditions everywhere very soon, and then I can repot this as well. For now, I'm not super worried about it being root bound. I provide nutrients with my watering anyway, so I don't think it's going to be nutrient deficient straight away. But this one I really enjoy. I specifically enjoy the way that these leaves unfurl when they first come out. They are super dark purple, and then as they inflate they become more red and then harden off to a green, and almost like a green silver, but also really dark. It's definitely gotten darker as it grows a bit older. So over the moon with about this plant. Very happy. 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10, would 100% buy again. And this has been in my IKEA cabinet the whole time. It is actually getting a lot of light in the IKEA cabinet. It's in one of the top spots, pretty close to a Soltec growth light. So I think definitely this one can handle a little bit of light and it doesn't bother it at all. But I don't think it's necessarily a super fast grower, but that's also okay. But see, maybe over the course of the second year it's gonna grow a little bit faster. But I'm very happy with this plant. Very happy actually, yes. This one is my Luxurians, and it's pushing out a brand new leaf over here. How cute is this? And I also love the ruffled petioles. Very root bound. I don't know if you can see this, so let's repot this. This is one of the latest additions to my Anthurium collection. There's I think 2 or 3 that came after. Look how root bound that is. It's just one solid mess, but it is very tree fern fiber heavy, so this should come apart quite easily because tree fern fiber is nice and flaky. So I just want to loosen up a tiny bit, but I also don't want to disturb the plant too much, especially while it is growing a brand new leaf up there. I don't want to undo all of this beautiful work. You can see how it's a climber, right? You can see it's climbing quite slowly, and there's some aerial roots over here that I would love to now make contact with a substrate. So I'm gonna pot this up a bit deeper. So I also want to loosen this up a bit so it's not already right at the bottom of the pot. I said I'm gonna be gentle, and I'm like going pretty hard on this, am I not, huh? It's gonna be worth it in the end. I want this hobby to be like super easy and fun and accessible, and I want to make people either get into the hobby or enjoy the hobby or not take this hobby too seriously, and just really get people to enjoy this hobby for the right reasons, and not because it is trendy or it's cool or because people are chasing like the rarest or most expensive plant and so on. Like, it's about the growing aspect, and hopefully people use my videos to enjoy the growing journey. Oh, hello! It's been a hot minute, I have to say, but we've been doing well. I believe these 2 leaves have both grown outside of the IKEA cabinet. I'm not too sure about this first one. This one definitely just hardened off the other day, so that's really good. And we have our first inflow. I mean, these leaves are looking really good, really happy with them. And then look at the inflow. Also, have a look at the petioles. Now that the plant is maturing, you can really see the intricate geometric shape of them. And the roots are looking very good as well. I need to water this. Oopsie. There's some dried up roots in there. I think I let this dry out a little too much. Anyway, shit happens. Let's collect some pollen. I have no aluminium foil. Usually I like to collect pollen in aluminium foil. Just gonna try it with this Ziploc bag, but I don't know if that's gonna work really well. I'm gonna just put the whole inflow there. Also, I can't see much pollen on here, so maybe I need to wait for a second and a third inflow to really harvest some pollen. I mean, you can't see anything on camera. That's because you also can't see anything in person. When I touch it with my hand, I can see a little bit, and I can definitely smell something florally, but maybe it's still a bit too juvenile to produce pollen. Or maybe I'm too early. I'll check in tomorrow again, see if that makes a difference. But yeah, it's not really harvestable just yet, I think. Maybe I'll wait for the next inflow. I have, however, when it was in the female stage, rubbed a little bit of clarinerium. There was a clarinerium inflow that was producing pollen at the time. I just rubbed that on there. The pollen might have been a little old though. It wasn't like super fresh. So I'm not super confident that anything's going to happen with that, but it is its first inflow anyway. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if the pollination does not work out, because pollination can also take a lot of energy away from the plant, and I think I'd rather have it grow some leaves. But I actually do want to collect a bit of pollen, because I think I would like to pollinate other anthuriums with this pollen, because this has very interesting features. Doesn't mean that it's going to be successful, but I would like to try, right? But yeah, anyway, I think I need to water this, but I just really wanted to check in real quick, because I think the first inflow is a bit of a milestone, specifically when we're talking about anthuriums, because chances are that you grow anthuriums not just for the leaves, but maybe you do grow some anthuriums with pollination in mind. So it's taken this long, however long it's been. Editing Jan knows. I think we're like 4 months out from 2 years, so 20 months. Yeah, anyway, I'll see you soon. Hello, I wanted to quickly check in with you because it has been a couple of months and we're seeing a little bit new growth. Let me bring you closer so you can see better. This is the newest leaf. How pretty is that? Love how like orangey, then red, almost going into burgundy as they grow up. And look at the petioles. I think the petioles are just so interesting, and they have the same petioles on the inflows. So let's talk about the inflows. There's 2 of them here now, which is good. You need 2 if you want to pollinate itself. Now, I don't think I collected the pollen from the first one, to be honest. No, I didn't. I don't think there was much pollen to collect. But the first inflow hasn't died off yet. So if I remember correctly, I just rubbed a clarinerium inflorescence on there. They were both in bloom at the same time. I was a bit harsh actually when I did that, and you can see there's a few scratches on it. But from my experience, by now this inflow should have probably gone a bit yellow if the pollination would have not been successful. But every species is also different in the speed in which it grows from inflorescence to infructescence. So I'm not holding my breath. It could still be a failure in the end, but I suppose that's part of, the intrigue, the story. It's part of the game. The second one, I have no desire to pollinate it, especially the mother plant, the one that actually has to, grow the inflorescence into the infructescence and the berries and so on. It's going to be very energy consuming for this plant. So I will collect the pollen from this inflow once we get there, and then maybe put it on another plant at some stage or whatever. But I do not want to pollinate this inflow in itself. I'm just going to keep an eye on that first inflow to see whether or not that wants to do something, and if I at any stage feel like it's not going to happen, then I also want to cut this off. With this plant, I'm really still aiming for nice foliage growth first and foremost, but as long as it's still growing nice leaves like this one over here, I'm not necessarily concerned. From here on forwards, every single leaf is going to give me that one inflow, right? They come out of like the petiole of that leaf. So you know, won't be the last inflow. AJ has also asked for me to collect a bit of pollen and give to her from this one, so that will be good. Now, the reason why I wanted to jump on here is not just because I want to show you that leaf. I also want to show you something, let's say like not proud of, but I wanted to show you because I think it is something that we often panic about too much. Of course, nobody wants root rot, right? We want healthy roots. And yes, once there's root rot, I always recommend acting on it. Remove all the rot so it doesn't spread, and then, you know, give it a new substrate and so on. This plant has healthy roots. You can see that over here. These roots over here, however, and it's hard to see, are not looking very healthy. Look at these ones over here. You can really see the healthy, more white looking ones. The fresh ones are more red. And then over here you've got all of these dried out brown roots over here. So I do think that somewhere in between we've had a little bit of root rot over here, and you know what I'm going to do about this? Absolutely nothing. I'm just going to keep it in its pot, and that's it. We're going into winter at the moment, so I really don't want to repot right now, and I'm also not concerned at all. Yeah, I mean, proof is in the pudding. We'll see if this plant is still alive by the next update, or if the root rot is gonna come for it. Again, not my recommendation. It's just something that, you know, I have noticed over the years happens every now and then, and there's no need to overreact. But if you rather get on top of it, that is obviously perfectly fine as well. If I were in spring at the moment, I would probably repot this straight away, because I think it could do with a bigger pot anyway. But because we're just going into winter, I just feel like I could actually cause more harm. So it's kind of like a common sense decision over here that I'm making, and it's something that I've learned over the years, right? I don't think there's like a decision tree that you can follow. I mean, maybe there is, I don't know, but everybody's decision tree would be different, right? So it's just something that I've learned over the years. It's more like an educated, risk-based decision that I have chosen to leave it. You know what I mean? And that is part of the skill of growing a plant, making decisions, right? Judging, assessing something, judging it, making the right call. And as much as it hurts, like you usually learn from making the wrong calls, right? I have made the wrong calls before, where I just panicked and did too much for my plant instead of just letting it be, and I caused more harm. And I've sometimes noticed taking a step back and letting the plant sort itself out works. So let's test that theory. I'll pop it back on the Anthurium shelf, and we'll see each other, well, soonish. I think it's only 2 more months until we finished year 2 for this plant. So I'll see you then. Hello, my friends, and we are back. It hasn't been all too long, but I feel like at the moment lots and lots of exciting things are happening. We are about 2.5 months out from the 2-year mark, and I just think this plant looks so stunning at the moment. This is the newest leaf. I think has just finished hardening off. I just think it is so stunning. It is really dark. I don't know if it shows on camera. It is darker than the previous ones, especially in here. There's a bit of sun glare. Hang on, I think sitting back actually is better. In the first year, it seemed so silver bluish, right? But now it's really coming through with the dark color. And I mean, the texture is just incredible. From the back, it's looking good as well. I love these structured petioles. I'm not too sure how that shows on camera. Yeah, these structured petioles, surely you can see this on camera now. And also the structured inflows. And usually I'm not a big fan of keeping inflows. I don't think inflows look good, but I don't know. I look at this with these 2 inflows here. Doesn't it just look like the perfect like botanical painting, right? Because if you see like these botanical paintings, they often include the inflorescence, because that's a really important feature for identification, for example. It just looks like something you would find in like a, I don't know, in like a proper botanic book, I don't know. So I decided to keep them on. Also, this one was the one that I rubbed the Chloenervium pollen on. I definitely think it has gotten a bit bigger, a little bit thicker if you compare it to the other one, right? It's thickening up a little bit, but I can't really see any like traditional bumps just yet, and it's been a while. But I think I'm going to keep it, as much as inflows can take away a little bit of energy from the rest of the plant. So far the plant isn't really showing signs of suffering. And then I've got the second inflow over here. I did nothing with it in the female stage because I didn't have any pollen, but I collected a little bit of pollen yesterday already. And I think there's gonna be enough pollen for me to maybe collect it again tomorrow. But anyway, I'm not here for the pollination journey. I'm doing a separate video on an Anthurium pollination, not this one in particular, but I'm dabbling into Anthurium pollination again a little bit, but that's not part of today's video, let's say. I really just wanted to show you the plant because I just think it looks so nice, and I think it's a nice example where the inflow actually looks good. Now, let's also have a look at the root system. That's important. It's looking really, really good, right? Really, really healthy. Lots and lots of them. Actually, there's a bit of room for roots here, so I'm not worried about it being root bound. I gave it a new top layer of moss. You can see that's nice fresh moss, just so roots like these, for example, over here. Can you see this one where my finger is? That was kind of just drying out beforehand. Now that I put this moss around it, I'm hoping that these will reactivate and then grow into the layer of moss and then eventually into the aeroid mix. We are just starting winter over here, so I'm not necessarily planning on repotting this plant unless I absolutely have to. And looking at the roots, I don't think I have to. So I will keep her as she is. She's gonna go back onto my shelf right next to my queen. So those two are looking so stunning next to each other. And yeah, I'm not too sure. My anthuriums don't grow all too much over winter, but I would love to have one more leaf before we wrap up year 2. So I'll stay patient, but for you that's coming up now. And we are back. Now, as you can see, not much has happened really over the last 3 or 4 months. Like, there's hardly any change from 2 updates ago. Actually, I think the plant looked better 2 updates ago because this leaf was brand new and had this really nice orange sheen. Now, I'm not surprised by that because the last 3 months were winter months over here. We are getting out of winter next month, but usually like May, June, July are the coldest months of the year. So I'm not surprised that I didn't really see any growth over the last 3 months. However, I'm growing it indoors, right? So indoors, the plant should still somewhat be sheltered. It's just relying on artificial light anyway. So technically, it shouldn't be so subject to the seasons, but it still kind of is. And look, that is part of the journey. Growing plants is not a linear trajectory. It's most likely an up and down, and I suppose that up and down is determined by the seasons, but also obviously my care, right? I could drop the ball on it and fully forget to water it and so on. That could obviously also set her back. But I think in those 2 years, I was pretty diligent with my care. So I think the ups and downs that this plant goes through is really mainly explained by the conditions. Maybe it's still putting effort into this inflow is also adding to some of the yellowing around the leaves, because obviously growing this inflorescence into an infructescence is gonna take away energy, but I'm pretty certain it's actually just winter. But let me bring you a bit closer as well. Now, mainly what I mean by like winter damage or, you know, the plant having seen better days is that all of the leaves start having some yellow edges over here. Even, I mean, this was the newest one. It just starts having them a little bit over here. But also, not so much with the newest one, but see, they all have a little bit of yellow around the sinus over here. And over here as well. This one's actually the most. Quite a bit of yellow. While I'm here close up, let me show you the inflow close up as well. Can't really see any distinct bumps in the inflow, but it is looking firm. It's not going yellow, and it's been a few months now, right? So, I mean, it is maybe like slightly bumpy. I suppose we'll find out. Oh, and of course, roots. Oh, sorry, I just watered this today, so it's dripping. First of all, good news is there's more roots coming out of the stem over here. So adding that additional moss around the moss pile is really doing its magic and triggering more roots to go into the pot. And you can really see there's more and more roots coming from the layer of moss that are now going into the aeroid mix. Now, 2 updates ago, I also mentioned the kind of dead roots over here. That's still the case. This part of the pot kind of has a few dead roots in it. but it obviously doesn't stop the plant from growing new roots. So I still haven't repotted it. Maybe losing a few roots also contributed to a little bit of that damage, but overall, like, it's been a really easy, continuous journey. The plant has spent majority of that second year outside of the IKEA cabinet as well. So the first year the plant was in the IKEA cabinet, and then 2 months after the 1 year anniversary I did a bit of a repot at the beginning of spring, and I gave this a bigger pot, and ever since then I moved it out of the IKEA cabinet. It's living in my bedroom next to all of my other anthuriums. Now the conditions in my bedroom are not as good as the IKEA cabinet. It's definitely not as humid. Instead of being 99%, it's more like 60%. And it's probably at all times 2 or 3 degrees cooler up there as well than in the IKEA cabinet. But I can't really see a distinct change in the plant's behavior or growth as a result of the changes in conditions, moving it from the IKEA cabinet into the bedroom. But I definitely notice a reduction in speed of growth as we're now going into winter, because it's more exposed to winter over there, right? Because it's not as insulated, so it gets cooler at night and so on. So I think the only really downside of having it in my bedroom instead of the IKEA cabinet is that it's more susceptible to the changes in seasons, because it is not in that little insulated box that kind of just keeps conditions pretty perfect year round. But instead it has space to unfold and spread out, right? These large leaves have all grown in ambient conditions and would have not even fit into my IKEA cabinet, so that's good. I think that's always the second trickiest part of these journeys. Obviously the trickiest part is the onboarding initially, right? Like, because, well, it needs to overcome all of the shock from shipping and so on. It needs to get used to your conditions. And then the second most stressful part, I would say, is moving it from my IKEA cabinet into ambient conditions. But I did that at the beginning of spring last year, so the plant had the best chances of getting used to these conditions. So on average, I would say this plant now gets exposed to about 60% humidity. The temperatures range from about 18 during winter to maybe 26 during summer. And she seems to be fine. So I would say on average around 22. I would definitely avoid anything colder than like 18 or 16. So yeah, I think nothing really unusual over here for this plant. Now she's in my normal aeroid mix. The last time I made this aeroid mix, it was a little bit more tree fern fiber heavy, and my plants seem to really like that, especially my anthuriums. And I think the layer of moss is definitely always something I recommend for an anthurium, so that you really take these roots from the stem and you encourage them to grow further. Now when it comes to watering, what I actually do is I just check, and once the layer of moss on top is dry, then I water. I don't think I'm really worried about over-watering. Yes, you've seen before some roots have suffered, but I actually think these roots suffered because I let it dry out too much before watering again. Overwatering isn't really a concern here, because overwatering is usually the phenomenon of the whole pot and substrate sitting in standing water for too long and then roots rotting. Overwatering doesn't mean that you are applying water too frequently. As long as your mix is well draining, and you can see that here, everything just drains out so freely, then I'm not concerned about how many times I provide water, as long as I make sure that the plant isn't sitting in excess water. And especially with anthuriums, I don't recommend letting them dry out. I never let them dry out, and I've never really had any issues with that. I provide my liquid nutrients, GT Foliage Focus, in like a week dilution. So that's about 3 to 5 milliliters per liter of water with every watering. But once a month, I take it into the bathtub and I thoroughly flush it out to make sure there's no mineral buildup. And at that time, I also give these leaves a little bit of a clean. They have a bullite texture, which means it is an absolute playground for pests, you know, like large surface areas, so more potential for pests. But I think I've only had thrips on this plant once, but that was because all of my plants actually had thrips. So I don't think it's necessarily a pest magnet. I've actually thought it had a really easy time. I've had a really easy time with this plant, but I think I'm quite lucky that I'm giving it very decent conditions, so my care is pretty easy as well. Overall, I'm treating this plant like all my other anthuriums, and that's a good thing. I have so many plants, I can't have every individual plant having a specific care routine, different nutrient provisions and so on, right? Like I have a way of caring for my plant, I have a way of watering, repotting, providing nutrients, watering schedules and so on, and all of the plants just kind of have to fit into the way that I want to grow, because I don't have time to give every single plant like individual treatment. So in that sense, it's good. This plant works for the way that I like to care for my plants, and I think it is really, really rewarding. And I think the most interesting part about this plant was actually just seeing how the plant changes over the course of those 2 years. I mean, it always had the texture, but obviously with maturity the texture becomes a little bit more impressive. But mainly the color changed, right? It was kind of really silver bluish at the beginning, and then eventually it turned into a little bit more green, and now it's like really dark green. And when the leaves first come out, they're really orange and so on. So I think in this specific plant, the texture and the color is amazing. And I've also spoken about the petioles 700,000 times, because I think they are also quite unique. And you can see that this petiole is now sending out another inflow. As I mentioned before, each leaf will have one inflow, and over here is going to be the newest leaf. So there is some sort of signs of growth. That's very good. Oop, look, I found a bit of moss on the floor. What I can do here is I can just take a bit more moss from here, and I'll just put that on the root so that the root does not dry out, and the same over here, just to encourage it to grow. So I really enjoyed that sort of journey, and I really enjoy seeing the leaves unfurl and then expand as well. I also think it is somewhat narrow, like it doesn't spread super, super far. So it's somewhat compact, and I just really enjoy how structural that plant is. The petioles have nice structure. It's just a nice display, and I'm not managing this plant whatsoever. The only thing that I do to manage this plant aesthetically is having a continuous light source from the front. So it only gets supported by artificial light. This plant does not get any natural light, has never gotten any natural light in its entire journey. In the IKEA cabinet, I have 2 Soltec grow lights. And over the last year, it was in front of my Mother Life Spectrum grow light, and they're all linked in the description as well if you want to check out more. The grow lights are on for about 14 hours a day, and the plant is around about a meter or so away from the grow light, maybe a little bit less, like this much, 60 centimeters away from the grow light. So it's not super, super close, but it's also not necessarily far away. But it seems to work really well for me and my anthuriums. I think at the moment it's just a little bit too cold to really optimize their growth. So far, nothing has really gone fundamentally wrong, so I'm kind of lucky in that sense, but unfortunately that also means that I don't have any like groundbreaking learnings. But as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, I think the main learning from this video is really patience. Patience in growing something. It took me 2 years, and yes, this is a decent specimen right now, but it's definitely not like shooting the lights out result. It was a very steady journey over those last 2 years, but I have to say that I was really excited about every single leaf that this plant has grown over the course of those 2 years. Even when the leaves turned out to be this big, it wasn't like I was sitting there just waiting for the plant to finally be ginormous. I appreciated every single leaf, and this plant has brought me a lot of joy. So very much worth the purchase. Now, it wasn't super cheap at the time of purchasing it. If I remember correctly, it was $100, which is not that expensive in Australia, to be honest, specifically 2 years ago. I mean, I personally don't like to spend too much money on my plants, but at the same time, it is also, a content idea for me. Now, $100 is definitely a bit more of a splurge for me, so it's usually something I buy at the beginning of spring, when it's also my birthday, so I spoil myself a little bit. That's not necessarily my average plant purchase, but considering that this plant was on my wish list for so long, and just a few years before that, it would have set me back $1,000 or $2,000, I think my patience was rewarded. If this plant would have cost me $1,000, I don't think I would enjoy it as much, right? Even if it would grow the exact same thing, even if it would grow better, I don't think I have the capacity to look at a plant that cost me $1,000 and really ever enjoy it. It will just forever remind me of my stupid financial decisions. So I think it's actually more rewarding to wait for the plant and then get it somewhat inexpensively and then grow it. It will make the journey more rewarding, but you definitely have to stay patient for that. So hopefully this video encourages you to go ahead and stay patient and not just purchase that next wishlist plant at all cost. However, your hard-earned money, you do with it whatever you want as long as it makes you happy. And if buying that $1,000 plant makes you happy, then I'm really happy for you that that makes you happy. I just wanted to come in as a voice of reason in case somebody is contemplating, whether or not to make that purchase. Just wait 6 months, and maybe in 6 months it will be half price, or maybe in 6 months you realize that, oh, you know what, I didn't need that plant that badly. I think that's a safe way to go about it. Unless, of course, it's your birthday, then go ahead and spoil yourself. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up over here, and I'm going to just put that plant back in its shelf. I'm not planning on repotting this until the beginning of spring. So I suppose that will be the next time you see this plant. And let's see what this plant can do in year 3, right? They say in year 1 they sleep, in year 2 they creep, and in year 3 they leap. So maybe by the end of year 3, you can't even see me behind these ginormous leaves. That would be ideal. Let's see how we go. How do you feel about this Anthurium? Is this an Anthurium that you would like to add to your collection? Do you have it in your collection? And if you do, how do you deal with it? Do you find it easy to care for? Do you find it tricky? Do you have any sort of tips or tricks that you can leave in the comments for, not necessarily myself, but for the community at large? Let us know whereabouts are you and how are you coping with this plant so we can learn from each other. Also, make sure you give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It's for free for you, but honestly means the world to me. I appreciate it, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.